Cairo, Seattle.
It's time to get schooled with the professor, John Clayton.
Welcome to Schooled with the Professor. We are pleased to be joined by Tod Leiweke, who, what an amazing story. I mean, first off, you were the number one person for the Paul Allen Sports conglomeration. Then all of a sudden, you can become an owner in hockey, and now the number two person in the National Football League. What an amazing thing that keeps happening to you, Tod. Congratulations, by the way.
Yeah, I'm not sure I agree with your numbers, but I definitely was a part of those organizations, and it's been a fun journey, this life.
Well, let's start from first. How did you get involved with the Seahawks?
Well, I had actually been, I had, before I arrived in Seattle, I had the great privilege of bringing hockey, being a part of a team that brought hockey back to Minnesota. And the North Stars, of all things, left Minnesota. And for 7 years, professional hockey didn't play in the state that was where the sport is native. And so it was really this incredible experience of building an arena there and launching a team and helping create the seeds of a great love story between the NHL team there. And I was happy, wasn't looking to leave, but sure enough, I got a call and ended up meeting Mr. Allen, and then I walked through a brand new stadium, and I said, how can this not be working? And as a kid, I learned to play hockey and loved it, but my dad played football in the military, and football was a part of our life in a pronounced way. And so I ended up having a breakfast with Mr. Allen, and I was really compelled by what he had to say. He saved the Seahawks for Seattle. He told me, hey, I used to be able to go to Dick's and eat a hamburger, and no one sort of knew me. And then we conducted the statewide campaign to build the stadium, and all of that changed. But for him, it was totally worth it.
Do you have any idea how the connection was that he came upon you as far as, I mean, obviously, because, he's a basketball guy, Seattle guy, but how did he know about what you were able to, was it just the fact that you were able to save a franchise and get something in where it was needed in hockey in Minnesota?
Yeah, I think he had folks involved in the search, but a lot of that did come down to sitting down with him over a couple of pastries and coffee and talking about, and the powerful thing for me is I was really happy doing what I was doing. The Wild turned out so much better than any of us could have even hoped. So, but I was really struck, and I was especially struck by this idea that he had saved the team. Because I think in anything in life, when there's nobility involved, it really is, it's so much easier. And so the nobility of the Seahawks was that he had saved the team. And fact was they hadn't hit their high note, even opening a new stadium, and he wanted to. He wanted to hit a high note. He wanted the team to more deeply resonate. He wanted to win. And that was pretty compelling coming from a guy who might be one of the most amazing people on the face of the earth today. And so, I jumped in, and there were definitely challenges, but at the end of the day, I was so proud to be a part of a team that did what we did.
Curiously, I mean, when you're sitting across the table and the pastries are there, did anybody recognize him?
Well, we were in his office,
okay.
And he wasn't wearing a tie, and I was. And I said to him, hey, do you mind if I take my jacket off? And he said, sure, if you want to take your tie off. And so I remember taking my jacket and my tie off. And, we were in his office, overlooked the stadium. And, I just kind of kept glancing over there thinking, wow, this place looks spectacular. But, for a variety of reasons, they opened the stadium and it didn't hit his high note. And his ambition was clear. And he wanted to get it to. And I felt at that point in time in my life a certain sense of potency that, if you have the right owner and you have the right mission and you root some things in nobility. And he clearly had done what he did because he grew up in Seattle. It was his town. He saved the team. And those are powerful sort of motives. So I day one really connected with him, and even in all of that, it was a little bit of a hard decision because when you start something from scratch, it's hard to walk away from it. Little did I know that not only would I have a chance to be involved with the Seahawks, but we would start a team from scratch in the Sounders.
And of course, when you were able to start, of course, that turned out to be an amazing success. You're probably one of the most successful soccer franchises in the U.S. But take us from the building of the Seahawks and how you constructed it, because it seemed like, number one, you're taking it from scratch. You end up a couple years going to the Super Bowl. You have a good coach, but also you wanted to try to develop a culture, and that seemed the thing that you were able to shape and do. What was your vision of the culture for football here in Seattle?
Well, I always think you start with the fans, and, the fans will lead you to the right. And, at the end of the day, Paul was a huge fan. And so there was this common denominator. You didn't have a corporate owner who was living, 1,000 miles away. You had a man who could live anywhere in the world, and he chose to live in his hometown. And he was ultimately a fan. And he shared the same hopes as a fan and actually the same frustrations. And we had a great coach, Mike Holmgren. He had taken, the Packers to the Super Bowl. He was a man of great gravitas and presence. We had a beautiful stadium. And so what we had to do is connect with the community. And, that happens through big things and small things. But, I remember Steve Largent talking to me on the sideline my first game. And he came up and said, "You're the new guy, huh?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Well, I'm Steve Largent." And I said, I know who you are, sir." And it was in that discussion we started talking about his feelings about playing in Seattle. And he talked in that discussion about this idea of the 12th man. And it was part of who we were, but it wasn't as big a part as it should have been or could have been. And it was that day that, it really, because we had some people talk to us about what the team brand should be and but at the essence, it was really about a town and its fans. And Seattle was the first team in the history of sports to retire a number in honor of its fans. And they did so because the Kingdome was so loud that the NFL imposed a home crowd rule, largely because of the fans in the Kingdome. And that had sort of faded, and we had not enough season tickets sold. We had too many visiting team fans in that brand new stadium. But when we dusted it off and reminded people of it, and began to again honor the fans and the traditions, it really became a self-fulfilling prophecy. And it became powerful, and I'll not forget. And we did some things that initially might have seemed a little crazy. We put a flagpole in this brand new stadium, and the first time we raised that 12th man flag, there was a smattering of applause, but people were like, "What's this?" Well, 2 years later, we were playing for the conference championship, and Paul Allen raised that 12th man flag. And the video was perfect that day. I will never forget it. The day it was a cloudy day, and the video came up and talked about him going to Husky games with his dad and his saving the team. And as the camera cut to him to raise the flag, there were tears coming down his cheek. And that was the fulfillment of a lot of things that we had been thinking about relative to the Seahawks and their connection. And the crowd went wild. And that was the day that, they recorded a seismic event over at UW because of how the stadium was shaking. And that's now, that was always there for the team. Now it's been completely restored, and now it's the loudest stadium, I think, in all of sports.
When you saw, when you were now at that time in hockey, and you saw them win the Super Bowl and then try to come back the next year, what did you reflect on? Because obviously so much of what was accomplished there was accomplished and set up by you.
Well, I don't really take that. I was on a great team, and I think I think the great privilege of being around teams is that you understand it's never one person. I mean, somebody can make a great play, but it's more than one great play that makes the season. So I was really privileged to be on a great team, and it started with Mr. Allen, certainly Mike Holmgren, but Tim Ruskell, our GM, deserved a lot of credit. Gary Wright, Mike Flood, Sandy Gregory, Chuck Arnold, We had great, our finance people were and great operators of the stadium, and so it was getting that team to coalesce, and we coalesced around the idea of the 12th man. I think that ended up inspiring our players, and so, it wasn't just looking back on ultimately Pete Carroll and those guys winning a Super Bowl. It was really looking back on this becoming this incredible, powerful franchise, and today it's one of the best in the NFL. They lead the pack in so many areas. Consumer products and the jersey are one of the top in the league, and it's just fantastic. And what a great privilege it was to be on that team.
So it seems like when you embrace a job, you figure that you're going to be staying a long time, and it's going to take a lot to pull you out. It took a lot, and it looks like, Tampa Bay, the Lightning were able to do that, not only giving you a chance to run that team, but getting you into ownership. How did that all come about?
Well, it was, I go all the way back to, my upbringing. I didn't have a classic education. As I tell people, I barely got out of high school, and I didn't go to college, and I got involved in professional sports. A chance, an owner came to me, a guy was buying a team, and he did give me a chance to be a limited partner. And that sounded great until I got there, and then I realized, oh my gosh, there's an amazing amount of work to be done here, and this might test all of my learnings in my career. But again, I think the most important thing is believing in fans and making sure you're working for an owner who shares your values. And that happened again for me in Tampa Bay. Jeff Vinnick, an absolutely spectacular guy, and that organization went through a real change. Again, I was a part of a team, so anyone who ever takes credit for something and says they're the reason, I'm always a little suspicious of that. I think that, but people do, get to choose to be on teams, and I think when you look at the winning teams in the NFL, they attract great players, and it's a fantastic thing. And we put together a great team in Tampa, and it, Steve Yzerman, Jeff Vinnick, Steve Griggs, and the whole thing came to be. And today it's a very proud franchise. But ultimately, there was a pull back to the NFL, and that did start in Seattle. And I one of the things that we did in Seattle to become more relevant is we got deeply involved in community affairs, and I had the privilege of chairing the largest United Way campaign in the country, which happens in Seattle. King County is the largest United Way in America. And we were in a tough year. It was 2009. We had the biggest campaign in America and most challenging economy in a long time. And so some of us sitting around, it might have been over a couple of beers. We said, look, well, how do you finish this campaign? How do you drive it? And we decided we were going to climb Mount Rainier. And Roger was still new as the commissioner, and people were testing him, and so I tested him and said, hey, Commish, you love community. You want to come out and climb Rainier with us? And we sent him a book. He learned a little bit more about it, and then he signed up and started climbing stairwells here in New York, although he said that he didn't quite realize what was in store for him until the day he flew out and looked out the plane window, and he was parallel with the top of Rainier and said, holy smoke. And but we went through this incredible journey over those 3 days of climbing up that mountain, and raised a lot of money for charity, and built a deep respect for one another. And so it's quite an honor when he said, I want you to come and work here at the league. And again, you said number 2, but I just feel like I'm on a team here. And I think it's a team that's done a lot of great things, and I really believe our best days are still in front of us.
That's amazing to think that led to this, which I'm not surprised, because, you can certainly have some bonding, both in working on the charity part of it, also just being able to climb that mountain and look over and see the sights of the whole area. So now, as you look from those sites, what do you envision the things that you're going to be working on in, making the team right for the National Football League?
Yeah, I've been here a year and a half, and part of it is just immense pride to work for the best league in the world, and to work with so many incredibly capable people. There's tons of opportunity, though. There's opportunities to better connect with teams, and that's really I've worked at teams my whole career, so now I'm a league guy with a team experience, and I think that's been helpful, and it's going to be helpful. There's lots of opportunity around the game. We've worked pretty diligently in the last months on pace of play, and that's really been, that's part of the Roger, the commissioner's. He loves the game, and he's always thinking about how we can make the game better. And then there's just a multitude of opportunities just all the way around, everything from, the network and how we can create deeper connection with the network to, things we're going to do around community and social. We've got our 100th anniversary coming up. And so days are full and rich here, that's for sure.
I know that Roger comes in pretty much, I guess, to every meeting and says, okay, what can we do today to make this thing better? How many times do you raise your hand and says, here's a couple ideas that I have?
Well, he's got that bias, and then, we have, hundreds of dedicated people, and I think part of my job is to create a culture where we can achieve what the boss is pushing for and create a culture that, has no silos and no barriers, and there's, creating the culture was good here, and my job is to figure out how we can take all these things that are good and great and make them even better. And again, I'm doing it as a team member here, and I think that's something I learned a lot about. I didn't come up through tennis. I came up through team sports, and I fully believe that, if you can get everybody pulling in the same direction, offense, defense, special teams, that's how you win games. And so that's part of my job here. And, talking to you is not, I love it, but I've really not been out front. So you and I have had some discussions in the corners at league meetings, but, I've assumed the role of somebody here who's not necessarily giving stump speeches every day, but trying to do things to make us collectively a better team.
Well, I'll tell you, it's just an amazing story and a great success story of how you continue to evolve and to do things. I mean, you think about the uniqueness of what you're able to do. I mean, there's only a handful of people that I know through the years have had chances to run several pro franchises, because you don't usually have an owner that would have three. I know that Paul Martha, who's a good friend of mine, who's no longer with us, was doing the same thing for Eddie DeBartolo. But to be able to do this, to be able to get into ownership in hockey, and then to take this job in the National Football League, it's a tribute to what you're able to do, the loyalty to the team members you have, and I guess the winning success.
Well, and, if you can't be inspired working in this business, but, I've worked for great owners, and the NFL's got just a lot of really deeply committed owners, but, the players and the fans, and if you can't pull inspiration out of that, and, I love our players. The locker room to me was, you and I were able to attend the service for Mr. Rooney this past week, but that same spiritual feeling of, being in a beautiful, epic Gothic church, that same feeling actually exists in locker rooms of it's a really, really special place that special things happen. And so, so a great privilege is being around players in my career, because I think that when somebody gets to the point that they can play in the NFL, they've developed not only incredible physical skills, but there's all these other great things that go with it. And some of the greatest people I've ever met in my life wore NFL uniforms, and that's held true. Players will come through the league, and I just always make it a point to pop my door open if I'm at a meeting, because it's just a privilege to meet these guys still.
Hey, Todd, congratulations and great success, and looking forward to seeing you at the next meeting.
Okay, John, you take care of yourself, and good to chat.
That's it for this week's edition of Schooled. You can follow me on Twitter at ClaytonESPN. Thanks for listening. Class dismissed.